We've got a number of quick-fire interviews in the programme today, starting with Steve Baker, who chairs Conservatives for Britain. Welcome to the programme. Now, you and your group, you want controls on EU migration, a parliamentary veto over EU laws, an ability to do our own trade deals. Now,
well, if I may, on that point...
Well, let me just stick with the first two then. I mean, I'm not aware that Mr Cameron's even asking for any of that.
So the group exists to assess the renegotiation when it comes and to prepare for an out campaign, because it seems inevitable that some colleagues will want one. But colleagues who've signed up to the group aren't necessarily committed to any particular red line. Personally, I've said I want a sovereign parliament, the freedom to trade with anybody and power over our own borders, and I think these are actually modest, not radical.
They may be modest, they may not, but my question was, I'm not aware, and am I right, that Mr Cameron is even asking for any of that?
Well, when we go and look at what David Cameron said over the course of many months and years, he said he wants to end ever closer union. He said he wants national parliaments as the source of democratic accountability and legitimacy. He's recognised that people want, the public want us to have control over our borders. So if he delivers things which go in the direction of travel, it's still conceivable that a majority of Tories will do what we want to do, which is to back him all the way.
But Philip Hammond said this morning on the BBC, just over an hour ago, that the idea of a parliamentary red flag veto on stuff coming out of Brussels is impossible. He said it would be the end of the EU.
Well,
so my question again is, they're not even asking for that.
Well, and that's why we think it's necessary to prepare for an out campaign. But the cat's out of the bag here. We need the best possible deal for Britain, and that does include a sovereign parliament. And if a sovereign parliament...
But he's ruled it out.
Well, in that case, we will have to have an out campaign. But it's not a surprise that some Conservative MPs wish to campaign to leave the European Union. The big question is, how many?
How many Tory MPs then take your position? That not that they necessarily will campaign out, but they want a lot more than Mr Cameron's asking for?
A large number of colleagues. I mean...
a third of the parliamentary party?
I would say dozens, at least dozens. But the reality here
you've got 50 so far.
I've got 50, and I would expect to get at least another 50. But the reality here is that when the renegotiation comes forward, we'll all of us, just like the public will have to, we'll all of us have to judge on which side of the argument we stand. This group is about getting together to make that assessment.
No, I understand that. You've said that. How many cabinet ministers are broadly sympathetic to you and your group?
Well, some cabinet ministers have made public statements, and we'll need to speak to them in due course. But they do have a collective responsibility, quite rightly, to support this renegotiation, as I support it, and I would not expect them at this point to give a running commentary on the renegotiation.
But come the renegotiation and it's done, and the government has to decide to recommend in or out. Let's assume Mr Cameron recommends in, which is what most people are assuming. Should cabinet ministers who disagree with them be allowed to campaign for out, or should they be bound by a collective responsibility for in?
That is, of course, a decision for the Prime Minister.
But I'm asking for your view.
My view is that they should be allowed to campaign in accordance with what they think is in the British public's best interests.
I mean, you're heading for a big disappointment, aren't you?
No, not at all. I got into politics because I thought that the EU settlement was unacceptable and I wanted a referendum. This is a very happy occasion.
But what I mean is that the outcome is not going to suit you at all. You're not going to get restrictions on free movement of people. That's clear. Correct?
Well, I think the British public want those restrictions on free movement, and it's not so much that the restrictions, it's that they want the policy for British migration to be set in London.
I understand the case for. What I'm saying is you're unlikely to get it. Both Mrs Merkel and President Hollande have ruled it out. And again, it doesn't look like Mr Cameron's even going to ask for it.
Andrew, realistically, I'd love to back the Prime Minister all the way. I want to be as supportive as possible to him now. The purpose of this group
as opposed to later?
The purpose of this group is to put pressure on the EU establishment, who don't seem yet to have understood that this is very real.
OK. Are you worried that the government in the EU might pour resources into a stay-in campaign?
Many of us are most concerned that these Purdah rules are unconventional and appear to allow government to spend unlimited quantities of taxpayers' money right up to polling day. That's the Electoral Commission's view. I think that's quite wrong, and I think the government should amend the law and so we can get back to the standard rules on Purdah.
Nigel Farage says he's ready to start the ground war to pull Britain out of Europe now. Are you ready to join him?
Well, of course he's ready. He's been doing the ground war to get us out of the EU for a long time. But the reality...
You could join him, though, at some stage, couldn't you?
Well, I certainly won't, no.
You...
I would never defect. It's as simple as that.
No, no, I don't mean defect. I mean you'll join him in a ground war to get us out at some stage.
At some stage, there will need to be a single designated out campaign, and we will see who is a part of it.
All right. Steve Baker, thank you very much.
Thank you.